Okay, Julie, this is a good question, and one that I guess I take for granted. I already know all this stuff, and so and I'm a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer in special education. So of course, I just sort of assume everybody reads their parental rights, and I find out that they don't. But every school system in every state is supposed to provide you your parental rights on a yearly basis, and your parental rights are mainly focused on what your rights are if you disagree with the IEP team. If consensus isn't reached on your IEP team with regards to your child services, also things like placement, things like eligibility. All those things, and also whether your child's receiving a free and appropriate public education, those are all things that Congress, within the law, provided the parent a right to challenge, and challenge through due process or through mediation or through a state complaint. Now, if you've reached that point and you believe that due process is necessary, well, you have the option to act pro se or act as your own attorney. Really, the law is constructed that way. But at the same time, is it an unfair fight? Yes, it is. Because even though on the outset of your mediation or due process, the school's board attorney can't be involved. Believe me, they're back there coaching, guiding the school system. And the other thing is, whereas you would file for one child, that school system on a yearly basis may have, 10 or more due process complaints, maybe two, depending on the size of your district. But that's still one more than you. And so they come with more knowledge and more calmness about this process. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that comes along with this process for a parent that hasn't navigated it before and doesn't understand it, which is what you're asking. So, do I ever advise a parent? Well, that's also why I created this group, so that we could create better parent advocates that are knowledgeable about this process, so that they could navigate it without necessarily needing somebody like me. But let's say you reach that point in due process, and let's say you don't feel comfortable and you want a specialized attorney. Well, within your parental rights, within the law, it requires a school system to provide you a list of no cost or low cost legal services. Now, a lot of parents don't know that. And a lot of schools don't know that. And a lot of schools really don't want to provide you with that list. But they're required to do that. Now, am I ever on those lists? No, I'm never on those lists. I should be, but I'm not. Now, at the same time, every state, from my knowledge, through a federal grant and state funding, have advocacy attorneys that will assist parents. And I'm talking actual attorneys, not advocates. And like the one in Alabama, for example, has staff attorneys that will help a parent navigate this process, but they also have advocates to act as case managers, helping guide parents as well. So they have a combination of both, working off of state and federal funding for the benefit of families. All right, so look to see what your state, and I believe I saw somewhere that you're from North Carolina, somewhere, and see what that group is. A lot of attorneys that do this, like I do, that specialize, it's really a business. It's whatever their business plan is. A lot of these places, a lot of these attorneys that specialize like I do, require big retainers because due process is carries risk, and it's an expensive process. Now, there's other attorneys that they don't require retainers down. They treat it more like a contingency process, which is what my firm, the kind of model that we work off of. So you just sort of need to call around. There's let's say Wright's Law, They do have a list of practicing attorneys in these areas. If you go to Yellow Pages for Kids, so Google it, Yellow Pages for Kids, and I can't remember if it's .org or .com, but that is where, and that's a rights law thing. Or you could go to COPA, which is the Council of Parent Attorney Advocates, and that's COPAA.org. And there's also going to be a list of attorneys that practice in this area that could help guide you. And I don't know, as far as the other part of your question, financial resources help support grants to cover those legal costs. The thing about your rights under this law is that if you prevail, if you have a strong case and you prevail, then that's part of your parental rights to have your attorney costs reimbursed or paid for. Reimbursed or paid for if you achieve that status of prevailing party. All right? So keep that in mind. And that's why some of these people, they'll require retainers. But just understand that it's in the law that you would have a right to get that money back if you prevail in whatever it is that you're challenging with your school system. Okay? And some of these attorneys that take these big retainers won't necessarily fight that hard to get that money back for you. That's where you have to push, and you have to sit there and say, no, guys, this is my right. I want that money back. It might take you a few years through federal court if the school decides to challenge it, but usually it's a lot cheaper to just negotiate that as part of a final settlement. That's about it.